Just moving on to, I guess, a totally different topic, just to broaden out the discussion. What plans are in place to increase and develop double taxation agreements?
DTAs are the future. I was fortunate to be able to initiate the tax information exchange agreements when I was in Treasury. It was almost the first act I did, actually, after I took over in 2002, was to sign a tax information exchange agreement with the United States. And the Isle of Man, actually, on the back of that, really led the way, and I think probably still is very much at the forefront of the small jurisdictions signing these agreements with the OECD and the wider community. There was some concern about signing tiers to begin with, that we were giving too much away, we shouldn't be at the front of the pack. I have to say, experience has shown quite the opposite, that by engaging in a very proactive and constructive way from day one, it has positioned the Isle of Man in a much stronger place than it could possibly have hoped to be 10, 15 years ago, when we were actually on the OECD blacklist. We've moved away from that and got in 2009 to when the G20 met in London. The Isle of Man was one of the first countries automatically placed on the whitelist. So we came a long way in that short period of time. And most of that was because of the willingness of the Isle of Man to sign tax information exchange agreements. And as I say, we led the way. Even the Channel Islands were very much in our wake in relation to that. I think, though, we possibly are coming to the end of the effectiveness of signing tax information exchange agreements. I think it's become so widespread now. We were groundbreakers for the small jurisdictions, and in many ways we were the model for the OECD to use to persuade other countries to do it. I think, though, we've gone through that phase now. The principle of tax information exchange has been accepted widely. The next debate, frankly, is going to be where we go with automatic exchange of information. We were the first, again, to give automatic exchange of information to the European Union, and others, or one or two, Jersey hasn't yet, have been slow to follow. The next debate is where do we go on automatic exchange, because that is going to be the big issue in the next few years. But out of that develops a focus on the double tax agreements. Now, we've been able to start signing. I think we've got 5 in total. We have one with Belgium, but they didn't have a government for 18 months, and they have an incredibly bureaucratic system that's been set up as part of the compromise to get a government in place. So I don't think we've quite got that ratified by Belgium yet, but I think we've got about 5. But that has to be the way forward for the Isle of Man, because within the new DTA agreements is a tax information exchange agreement as well, so that they're now amalgamated in one agreement. It's only through the DTAs that we're going to be able to open the doors of many countries to do business. For example, we are currently reviewing our country-by-country strategy for where we focus our marketing effort. Now, everybody jumps at the obvious. We've got to go to China, we've got to go to the Middle East, we've got to go to India. That's where the growth is. Fine. On the face of it, that sounds a really good idea. Except you then have to say, well, how easy is it to start doing business with these countries? And India in particular, although it appears to have so much potential for us, is very, very hostile to offshore locations at the moment, not necessarily because of the Isle of Man. Mauritius has been the problem with India, but they're very hostile about signing any agreements at present, and we are struggling to get the concept of a DTA agreed with India. We're still quite some time away from that. But the problem is, unless we get a DTA with India, it's going to be almost impossible to really capitalize on the business opportunities that exist there. India is probably the best example of where there is a problem. But there are many other countries as well, which on the face of it look as if they're very attractive locations to do business. But and we will still be able to do business at the margins, but we won't be able to do a good, solid core business with those countries until we have those agreements in mind. Now, Malcolm Couch and Treasury have recognised that. We've had a number of meetings about the ideal way forward on that. And there is a new imperative now, I think, in Treasury to start to identify where we can gain these DTAs. They're much, much more difficult to sign with other countries than tax information exchange. You have to face the fundamental question about the co-signatories. Their first question is, well, what's in it for us? Which is a quite logical question. And we haven't always got the answers to that. There is also the problem of signing a double tax agreement between a country with a recognised tax system and a country with a zero rate of corporate tax. That in itself has baffled a few people or a few countries as to how that relationship would actually work. China was a good example of it. We've raised it with China and their view is, well, you don't have any corporate tax, so what interest would there be for us to have a double tax agreement? And so the story goes on. But the core answer to what you're saying is the future is double tax agreements. That's where the new business is going to come from. That's where we take the level of tax information exchange, which we've worked so hard over the last decade to develop. We take that up to a different level, but we get more of a trade-off with DTAs. The problem with tax information exchange, yes, we exchange information, and it has led us to a higher level of acceptability on the international arena, but it hasn't necessarily brought us any extra business on the back of it. DTAs will do that, and that's the direction we're going in now. But it's going to be a much more difficult process than the one we've initiated with tiers.
I guess a couple of supplementary questions to that in terms of what help, if any, do you get from the private sector in terms of opening doors to potential contacts to help with DTAs? And is there any, if there is no assistance at the moment, is there anything that can be done?
I have to say, being quite blunt about it, it is exceptionally frustrating sometimes dealing with the private sector as far as moving DTAs forward. It would be a great assistance to government and to Treasury in particular to get a clear steer from the business community which countries you want us to have DTAs with in the first place. It has been like drawing teeth, frankly, over the last few years to get a coherent message from the business community as to which countries you want us to look at. And I have to say, in many, many cases, it's not a question of the private sector opening the door for government, it's government trying to open the door for the private sector. And that is a major disappointment, I have to say, if we are going to develop a dynamic economy here, driving forward new initiatives and building these new international contacts. So that there is a real need for the island as a whole to understand the economy that we have to begin with. Even government doesn't have a clear steer on the range of countries that we do business in. Where are the biggest opportunities? We've got 17, 18 different sectors, whatever they are. Often those sectors all have different priorities in terms of the countries that they, from their own narrow point of view, they want us to address. So it's very difficult actually to get them a clear message from the business community as to which countries you want us to look at. Because we could be spending months and months and months knocking on the door of one country, only to find that the real country that you want us to go to is something quite different. We've wasted all that time trying to get into a country where, frankly, locals don't do any business. So there needs to be a much better understanding of how the economy is working, where we get our business source, where our business is sourced across the piece. And only through that can we get a much clearer idea of where we get that business from. You know, a huge amount of business that we do over here goes through our CSP business. That's something we have no access to at all. We don't know where that business comes from, which are the favourite countries, where should we be looking to try and get that business. And so it goes on right across the piece. So there's a great deal of work to be done within the business community to help us, I think, as much as the other way around.